Hi guys, and welcome to a beginner's guide to modding Skyrim, part 6. In the past few episodes of this series, we have been focusing on how to make Skyrim look better. We have made the water look better, we've improved the textures, and we've even found ways to make the meshes, the models, look far more detailed and a lot nicer to look at. And we are going to finish that visual focus in this episode by looking at the light, ways in which we can improve the Skyrim game's lighting. Some of the very first mods that came out for Skyrim were actually lighting mods, and for very good reason. Skyrim's lighting is a little disappointing. Very often I find the image to be a little bland. The sky seems a little desaturated, to be honest, and whilst you will get the odd moment, the odd sunset that are pretty cool, generally speaking, there's nothing to get excited about. And the interior lighting is worse. It's very bland, it's very uniform, it doesn't look realistic, and it's a little cold. And dungeons, well, they are way too well lit to be realistic. Dungeons should be a little creepy, perhaps a little scary as well, and I'm afraid Skyrim fails in that department. Now, there are plenty of mods that will change this for you, some of them fairly easy to install and light on your system, and others a lot more complicated and that demand a huge amount from your system. For example, Opusfelt 6 ENB. This will make your game look phenomenal, really, at times almost photorealistic, but it really does drop your frame rate. It can half it, it can often reduce it by 80% depending on your system, and it is a lot harder for a beginner to install. And so I am going to start at the other end. I'm going to start with the most popular lighting mod, and that is Project Reality Climates of Tamriel. Climates of Tamriel is a weather and lighting overhaul. It basically revamps all of the weathers, from the rain and the way it sounds and looks, to foggy, misty weather. It really actually does quite a lot of foggy weather, which adds an air of mystery to the game. But more than anything, the thing you'll notice the most is it changes the light, the way Skyrim looks. The bland, boring skies become a little sharper, a little bit more colourful, and a bit more interesting, definitely more pleasant to look at. The sun is a little more impressive, but the air is a little sharper, which actually makes the game seem a little bit colder actually, especially in snowy mountainous areas. And all round, it just makes the game look a little better pretty much everywhere. In fact, some of the ENB mods that you may use later on to make your game look even better use Climates of Tamriel as a base, and it requires this mod anyway. So this mod has a very good pedigree for the lighting and the weather. Now, not everyone likes Climates of Tamriel. They find it desaturates perhaps a little too much, so it makes Skyrim look a little bleaker. And if you fall into that category, you can find other lighting mods. There are plenty of them. For example, URWL, which stands for Ultra Realistic World Lighting. Please ignore the title, it's a little misleading, it's just a name. It actually makes the game's lighting quite colourful. It makes Skyrim feel warmer, and colours are definitely a lot more vibrant. It gives the game a very warm fantasy feeling. And as I mentioned, there are many other mods, from ENB mods or RCRN, and they range in how much they affect your performance, how hard they are to install, and the exact effects that you get. I'm going to leave that for you to discover once you get a little bit more experience under your belt. Now, I did mention that the nights in Skyrim were too bright, and Climates of Tamriel gives you a lot of options for that. There are 8 different darkness options. So for example, this is the night's level 2 darkness, and as you can see, it's a little darker, it feels a little bit more intimidating. The level 4 darkness, as you can see, is a lot darker. That is going to make moving around in the dark something you're going to be nervous about. You're probably going to want to take a torch for good visibility, and you may find yourself getting ambushed easily. However, I wouldn't recommend going over that. look at this scene. Now this is the vanilla scene. Again, very bright. Look at level 2 with Climates of Tamriel. And as you can see, it's a little darker. Now look at level 4. And do you notice how the fire itself got dimmer and darker as well? I'm afraid that's what Climates of Tamriel does. And if you go any higher than 4, light sources become very dim. You feel like you're using sunglasses rather than being in the dark, which is, you know, not brilliant. Of course, the URWL mod also darkens nights, and as you can see, it is pretty dark. However, the fire remains a nice, warm, bright source of light. Oh, and this is the normal darkness version of URWL. There is a bright option and a darker option, but honestly, the normal one I think is brilliant. It does make the nights a little darker, but fires and light sources are still very bright and very warm. So that's exteriors. Let's cover dungeons and interiors now. Now, Climates of Tamriel actually has options to make interiors darker. However, I'm going to recommend you use one of 2 other mods. One mod is called Realistic Lighting Overhaul, RLO for short, and the other Enhanced Lighting and FX, ELFX for short. Both of these mods change the lighting in interiors and in dungeons dramatically. They make the game look so much better when you're in those areas. They make interiors look warmer and cozier. They make dungeons look kind of creepy and scary. And which one is for you is a little bit a matter of personal choice. However, I did recently do a comparison video covering both of these mods, and I go into a lot more details. If you want to see them compared, go and check that video out. It's not very technical. It's pretty much beginner friendly. So you check that out, you'll get a very good idea of what these 2 mods offer. But if you want the short version, both mods make the game look better when inside or in dungeons. They both make dungeons scarier, and if you really are going to make a choice between the 2, it's probably going to be based upon lighting in the dungeon. With Realistic Lighting Overhaul, you probably want to take a torch with you. It's going to make navigating a little easier. It's going to make it easier for you to find loot or switches. With ELFX, you need to take a torch. You are simply not going to be able to function down in the dark dungeons without a light source. It is brutally dark. And in the end, I think most people choose which mod to use based upon that. Okay, so let's install these mods. The first thing we need to do is to download the mods that we're going to install. So for example, with Climates of Tamriel, go along to the file section. I'm going to need to download with Manager on the main file. This is the one I recommend. Download with Manager on the main file. If you have Dawnguard and Dragonborn, you are also going to need to download with Manager on these 2 patches. There are some other options, for example, the Climates of Tamriel sounds, which can add ambient sounds, and there is also an option to make the winter edition, to use the winter edition, which will make Skyrim look a little colder and a little more winter-like. However, I have not tried that out, so I cannot tell you how well it works. And once the files have finished downloading, simply go along to Project Reality Climates of Tamriel version 3 and hit Activate. Now you get this installation menu. The only thing I think you really need to change is the vanilla nights. If you want it to be darker instead of the default experience, you can choose, I'll pull this out a little bit so you get more. In fact, I'm going to maximize it. This is the default experience, level 1 darkness, level 2, and so on. I would not recommend going below level 4. As I mentioned, once you start getting down to 6, 7, and 8, not only does the night become ridiculously dark, so do torches and light sources. It's a little unfortunate. Level 4 is the lowest I would go, and for me, I usually pick 2 because I record all my videos and people would like to be able to see. For the interiors and the dungeons, I do recommend using the default experience. For the interiors are not too bad. You can do the warm interiors or the cold if you like. For the dungeons, honestly, I do not like the way the dungeons are darkened in Climates of Tamriel. It darkens your torch. which looks very strange. So I would use another mod for dungeons and for interiors. And then once you have selected your options, click Finish. It will take a few seconds. Before you run boss to sort out your load order, I would recommend activating the Dawnguard patch. Click No, just to install the mod normally. And the same for Dragonborn. And then you can run boss, and that will fix your load order. Now, if you would rather try ultra-realistic world lighting, there are 3 versions to download. The top version contains them all, but you have to download manually and choose the one you want. It's a little easier to just download with Manager on the version you want. Or if you want to try all 3, download with Manager on all 3, and then you can try them one after another and see which you prefer. The only difference is bright nights, dark nights, normal nights. The nights I was showing you in the video were the normal ones, and I think they're easily dark enough, so that's the one I would generally recommend, but feel free to try the others. If you have already installed Project Reality and you want to try ultra realistic world lighting, don't forget to deactivate Climates of Tamriel first. You don't want both of them running at the same time. I'm not totally sure what the effect would be actually, but I don't recommend it. And then go along to the ultra realistic world lighting version that you want. I wanted normal and activate, and it's very, very simple this time. And again, use boss to sort out your load order. To install the interior mods, we're going to start with realistic lighting overhaul. Go along to the file section and download the version that has the download with Manager button. Once the file has been downloaded, select realistic lighting overhaul and activate. You will get some options. I would suggest custom selection in your case because you've probably installed Project Reality. I am going to choose major city interiors, including the homes. I also want major city exteriors. Now this changes some of the lighting around cities. So if you want better lighting with some of the sconces, some of the torches, you can select this. There are also minor cities and town interiors, dungeons, and Dawnguard interiors. I want all of these. I've got Dawnguard, so I want this. Now the adaptive interiors is only required if you do not use Climates of Tamriel. Now I am using Climates of Tamriel, so I do not need this selected. If you have chosen to use URWL or another lighting mod, you may have to select this so that the interiors have adaptive lighting. Once you've made your selection, click Finish. And again, use boss, it will sort out your load order for you without any trouble. For enhanced lights and effects, go along to the file section. You're going to need the main file, obviously, but there is also a patch for Dawnguard, and if you are using Dawnguard, you are going to need that as well. So I'm going to select this one and this one. And again, if you have installed Realistic Lighting Overhaul to try it out and you're now switching to Enhanced Lights and FX, don't forget to deactivate it. Then I'm going to go to Enhanced Lights and FX. I'm going to install that one first. And obviously you need the core files, but I would also recommend having both the ELFX Enhancer for the interiors and the exteriors. Might as well have some enhancements to the exteriors as well. It only enhances the light sources, so it doesn't conflict with your weather mod. Click Next. I don't have the Moon Path to Elsewhere mod. I do want the tavern, so I'm not selecting this. And if I ever get Breeze Home, I want it, so I'm going to have this as well. Then I click Next. I am using SMIM, so I do want SMIM selected, but I also like the candle smoke, so I'm leaving that unselected. And then I'm hitting Finish. It then asks me, do I want to overwrite these files for SMIM? And I'm going to click Yes to Mod. There you go. And once that's finished, I'm just going to select the Dawnguard patch and activate that. Click No to install normally. And it's that simple. I now hit boss to sort out the load order and I'm finished. Okay, well that's about it for this video, and it's probably about it for the subject of beautification of Skyrim. The last few videos focused very much on making the game look a little nicer, and I'm going to move on now to mods that make the game experience more pleasant, either by making it more challenging, more immersive, or perhaps more convenient. There are a load of great mods that I consider pretty much must-have mods, and I think a lot of them are going to be things you want to try out. You guys are more than welcome to join me for those videos, and I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, as always, have fun.